agreed. This video was unsettling. The person walked right into Kathy's front garden. This gave them a time frame of somewhere.
You step into your home late at night, hoping to find comfort and quiet. Instead, you walk into a horrifying reality. Your mother has been attacked and left lifeless in her own bedroom. This is exactly what Joseph experienced on December 6, 2014, in Austin, Texas. The scene was heart-wrenching, and the case seemed impossible to solve at first. But the police used a breakthrough piece of technology, thermal imaging, to uncover a trail of evidence that would ultimately reveal the truth behind this devastating crime. Kathy Blair was a 53-year-old music teacher whose life was deeply intertwined with her passion for music. As the director of the Christian Choral Society of Austin, she devoted countless hours to nurturing the talent of her students, helping them find their voices both on and off the stage. Her friends and family described her as warm and compassionate, someone who radiated kindness and left a lasting impact on everyone she met. She lived in a peaceful suburban neighborhood in Austin, Texas, a place where doors were often left unlocked and the idea of crime seemed far removed from daily life. The streets were lined with cozy homes, a testament to the trust and comfort shared among the residents. But that serenity was shattered on December 6, 2014. Joseph, Kathy's son, arrived home expecting to find his mother as cheerful and welcoming as ever. Instead, he was met with an unspeakable scene, his beloved mother lying motionless in her bedroom. It was a discovery that would shake the entire community and launch an investigation no one could have foreseen. His mother lay lifeless, and the room bore clear signs of violence. Panicked, Joseph grabbed his phone and dialed 911. His voice trembled as he pleaded, "Hey, I need you to come to my house right away. I think someone broke in and killed my mom." When the police arrived, they quickly confirmed Joseph's worst fears. Kathy had been brutally attacked, her throat slashed in what appeared to be a cold and calculated act. Officers noted that her jewelry box had been emptied, with pieces of Kathy's cherished belongings missing. As investigators combed through the scene, something stood out. There were no signs of forced entry. The door had not been broken, nor were there indications of a struggle at the entrance. This left detectives with a haunting theory. Kathy's killer might have been someone she knew, someone she trusted enough to let inside her home. Among the few pieces of evidence they found was a single bloody shoe print near the body. It was a size 10, and investigators knew it could be key in identifying the person responsible for the horrific crime. With that clue in hand, the investigation began to uncover who had committed this unthinkable act, and why. The news of Kathy Blair's tragic death sent shockwaves through her community. As a beloved music teacher and director of the Christian Choral Society of Austin, Kathy had touched countless lives with her passion and dedication. Her students, many of whom saw her as a mentor and second mother, were devastated. In a tribute to her legacy, just 5 days after her passing, the Christmas concert Kathy had been preparing for was performed in her honor. The auditorium was filled with her students' voices, but the air was heavy with grief. Many sang through tears, their performances a heartfelt farewell to the teacher they adored. On December 20th, hundreds of people gathered to pay their final respects at Kathy's funeral. Friends, family, and neighbors shared memories of her kindness, her infectious love for music, and the profound impact she had on everyone she met. The pain of her loss was deeply felt, especially in her quiet, close-knit neighborhood. It was a place where people had always felt safe, where such a brutal act seemed unimaginable.
I can't tell you how proud all of us are.
The loss of Kathy was not just personal, it was communal. Her absence left a void that could never be filled, and her memory became a symbol of the love and harmony she had always brought into the world. In the early hours of December 6th, while most of the neighborhood slept, a critical clue was captured by someone just a few houses away. Rob, a neighbor and hobbyist with a passion for hunting gear, was testing out his new thermal scope. He had been scanning the quiet street when something caught his attention. The scope recorded the outline of a person walking near Kathy Blair's house at precisely 1:16 a.m. What stood out most wasn't just the presence of this figure at such an odd hour, it was the way the individual walked. The footage showed a distinctive gait that was hard to miss, giving detectives something unusual to focus on. Rob's recording didn't just capture the figure. A dark-colored Toyota could also be seen briefly in the footage, parked near Kathy's home. This detail was crucial. It wasn't a vehicle anyone in the neighborhood recognized. For investigators, these two pieces of evidence, the figure's unusual movement and the unfamiliar car, began to form the beginnings of a timeline. The timestamp on the thermal footage aligned closely with what they already suspected. Kathy's murder likely occurred in the early hours of the morning, and now they had video evidence placing someone near her home during that critical window. The distinct walk hinted that the person might have been someone with a noticeable physical trait, such as a limp or an injury, narrowing the pool of potential suspects. For detectives, Rob's footage provided the first tangible lead in an otherwise baffling case. It suggested that the killer wasn't a random intruder, but someone with intent and a plan. The presence of the dark Toyota added to the growing suspicion that the person seen in the footage had arrived with a specific purpose. The question now was clear: who was this individual, and what connection, if any, did they have to Kathy Blair? The investigation had taken its first real step forward. Just as the Austin community was grappling with the tragic loss of Kathy Blair, another horrifying crime shattered the sense of security in the area. Only a week after Kathy's murder, 85-year-old Sidney Shelton and his 83-year-old wife, Billie, were found dead in their home. The scene was gruesome. Both had been beaten, strangled, and stabbed. The level of violence left investigators stunned and the neighborhood shaken to its core. The Sheltons were known as a sweet, loving couple who had been married for over 60 years. Their home, like Kathy's, was in a quiet, peaceful neighborhood. Yet their lives were taken in a way that left many questions unanswered. What stood out to detectives immediately were the chilling similarities to Kathy's case. The jewelry boxes in the Sheltons' bedroom were emptied, and their room was ransacked. Despite the destruction inside, there were no signs of forced entry, raising the unsettling possibility that the killer might have gained access by other means, perhaps through manipulation or familiarity. The parallels between the two murders were too glaring to ignore. Both crimes involved elderly or vulnerable victims, both homes were left in disarray, and in both cases, valuable jewelry was stolen. These connections left investigators wondering, were these attacks connected? Could this be the work of the same person? The idea that a serial killer might be targeting the area was deeply troubling. It raised fears that more lives could be in danger if the killer wasn't caught soon. The community, once peaceful and close-knit, now found itself gripped with fear and suspicion. For law enforcement, the stakes were higher than ever, and the pressure to find answers intensified with each passing day. As investigators dug deeper into the murders, one name kept surfacing: Timothy Parlin, a local handyman who had crossed paths with Kathy Blair. Kathy had mentioned to a friend that Tim made her uneasy, but nothing had come of it at the time. Now, with no clear suspects, detectives turned their attention to him. Timothy Parlin had a checkered past that raised immediate concerns. He had served time in prison for jewelry theft, a detail that tied disturbingly well to the empty jewelry boxes at both Kathy Blair's and the Sheltons' crime scenes. The detectives couldn't ignore how his history seemed to match the pattern they were seeing. When police tracked Parlin down to a local hotel, their first encounter with him only fueled their suspicions. Parlin refused to let detectives into his room, a move that immediately set off alarms. He seemed evasive, avoiding direct answers to their questions. What really stood out, though, was his alibi, or lack of one. He claimed he was working at a 7-Eleven at the time of the murders, but when detectives followed up on this, the evidence simply didn't add up. Parlin's behavior and his past crimes placed him firmly under the spotlight. While investigators didn't yet have enough to make an arrest, they knew they had to keep a close watch on him. With each detail they uncovered, the pieces of the puzzle seemed to edge closer together, pointing to a man who might hold the key to solving these brutal killings. Detectives made a breakthrough when a pawn shop receipt led them closer to unraveling the mystery. Timothy Parlin had pawned a necklace just hours after Kathy Blair's murder. That necklace was later confirmed to have been stolen from Kathy's home, directly linking him to the crime scene. This discovery was enough to put the pressure on Tim, but it wasn't the only evidence stacking up against him. Surveillance footage soon revealed Tim driving a dark green Toyota, a detail that caught the investigators' attention. This car matched the description of the vehicle captured on the thermal imaging footage near Kathy's house on the night of the murder. The timeline, the location, and the car, all of it started forming a clear picture. Then came the most damning piece of evidence. Detectives found bloodstains in the passenger seat of Tim's car. Lab analysis confirmed that the DNA belonged to Kathy Blair. The evidence was undeniable. Tim had transported Kathy's blood, cementing his involvement in her brutal killing. When confronted, Tim eventually cracked under the weight of the evidence. However, his confession was not straightforward. He admitted to being involved in the crime, but denied committing the murder himself. Instead, he pointed the finger at another man, Sean Gent Balcazer. According to Tim, Sean was the one who had taken Kathy's life, while Tim had merely assisted in some way. This confession complicated the case. Was Tim trying to deflect blame, or was there truth to his claim? Investigators couldn't take his word at face value, but it did give them a new lead to follow. While Tim's story raised more questions than answers, the mounting physical evidence left no doubt that he had played a significant role in the crime. The case, it seemed, was finally beginning to come together. With Timothy Parlin pointing the finger at Sean Gent Balcazer, the investigation took an unexpected turn. Sean was a schoolteacher, known in his community as quiet and responsible, with no prior criminal record to suggest he might be involved in something so horrific. When detectives first approached him, Sean cooperated fully, answering their questions without hesitation and even allowing them to search his belongings. Despite Sean's willingness to assist, the detectives couldn't ignore the possibility of his involvement. Tim's accusation was serious, and the police had to ensure every lead was thoroughly examined. However, something didn't add up. Sean's clean record and calm demeanor raised doubts in the minds of investigators. Could someone like Sean really be capable of such a brutal crime? Detectives started to suspect that Tim was using Sean as a scapegoat. It seemed plausible that Tim, desperate to deflect blame, had picked someone with no obvious connection to the crime to sow confusion and buy himself more time. This theory gained traction as the evidence against Tim continued to mount, while nothing concrete tied Sean to the murders. Though the detectives didn't rule out Sean entirely, their focus remained on Tim. The idea of an innocent man being dragged into such a harrowing case was troubling, but until they could eliminate all doubts, Sean's name would remain in the file. For investigators, this was yet another layer in an already complex and deeply unsettling case. As the investigation unfolded, the focus returned to Timothy Parlin. The mounting evidence against him left no doubt about his involvement. From the pawn shop receipt tying him to Kathy's stolen necklace to the DNA evidence found in his car, detectives finally had enough to charge Tim with murder. His attempts to deflect blame onto others only solidified the case against him, and the community watched closely as justice began to take its course. The judge delivered the harshest punishment to both Timothy Parlin and Sean Gent Balcazer for their involvement in the brutal crimes. Timothy was held responsible for the murders of Kathy Blair and the Shelton couple, which occurred during the course of home robberies. Sean, on the other hand, was implicated through strong physical evidence and his own confessions, confirming his role in the murders. For these heinous acts, the court sentenced both men to life in prison with no chance of parole. The punishment reflected the gravity of their crimes, as it wasn't just about theft, it was cold-blooded murder that ended the lives of innocent victims. For Kathy Blair's family and the Shelton community, the arrest brought a sense of relief. Yet, questions remained. What drives someone to commit such senseless and violent acts? The tragedies left scars that would take years to heal, but at least there was some measure of closure for the victims' loved ones. This case was a stark reminder of how fragile life and trust can be, even in the safest of places. This story forces us to reflect on the fragility of trust and the importance of vigilance. What are your thoughts on this case? Could something have been done to stop these horrific crimes sooner? Share your opinions in the comments, and don't forget to spread awareness by sharing this video with others.